Have you ever wondered how a single player's decision can reshape the entire NFL landscape? Today, we're diving deep into two potential seismic shifts: Aaron Rodgers' next destination and the swirling trade rumors surrounding Myles Garrett. Buckle up as we explore potential landing spots, trade implications, and the ripple effects these moves could have across the league. At 41, Aaron Rodgers has parted ways with the New York Jets following a tumultuous tenure. His 2023 season was cut short due to injury, and the club had a dismal 5-12 record in 2024. Letting him go now could see a multitude of clubs keen to pick him up. So, we'll begin with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders are a potential option for Rodgers. They do need a quarterback, and although they do have a solid draft pick, there's no assurance they'll be in a position to obtain one of the higher quarterback prospects. The Raiders have been actively changing things, bringing in head coach Pete Carroll and offensive coordinator Chip Kelly. Kelly's background in high-speed offense may mesh well with Rodgers' skill at reading defenses and delivering quick decisions. The Raiders also have Tom Brady as a minority owner, which adds a twist to it. Brady and Rodgers have been on-field rivals for years, and Brady's presence could be enough to persuade Rodgers to join. Brady understands what veteran quarterbacks need to succeed and may be able to offer the correct deal to Rodgers. The Raiders would need to get some things sorted out logistically to make this a reality. They must have their salary cap situation taken care of, because Rodgers would be due a huge salary. They must have their receiving cores and offensive line situated so they can give Rodgers what he needs to thrive. The group does possess talent at a few of the marquee positions, including Davante Adams, who shared time with Rodgers previously in Green Bay but would need to surround him with additional pieces. The Raiders also need to think about their future. As good as Rodgers would aid in the short term, they need to consider developing a young quarterback for the future. They may be in a spot to draft a quarterback who'd be able to learn from Rodgers for a year or two before becoming the starter. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers. The quarterback situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers is murky. They have both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but have not committed to either player definitively. Aaron Rodgers would be a short-term fix while helping to bring their younger quarterbacks along. The Steelers have built a good defense and had continuity in their coaching staff for several years. These factors might match up well with a veteran quarterback like Rodgers. The Steelers would need to change some of their offense to fit Rodgers' playing style. The team has some ways they approach their offense, and obtaining Rodgers would mean they would need to change some of those plans. The front office needs to think about whether or not signing Rodgers is a wise investment for their money and their future. They need to weigh the short-term gain he might be able to give them against what it could cost to get him. The team also must consider how this addition would affect their salary cap and their ability to still build the remainder of their roster. As valuable as Rodgers is with his experience and talent, the Steelers must make sure any deal would still enable him to enhance other parts of their team. The Tennessee Titans could be another possibility for Rodgers. They've managed to get into the playoffs, but have lacked a steady quarterback. Rodgers would be a good match with their current approach, since they have Derrick Henry leading a strong running game. This combination of Rodgers passing and Henry running could make their offense much harder to defend. The Titans also have a good defense, so they already have core elements to be contenders for the championship. This could only be successful if the Titans could guarantee their offensive line covers Rodgers adequately. They would also need to exercise caution in how much they'd have to shell out for him, and how this would impact their ability to sign other personnel. This is because they still need to have sufficient funds to assemble a complete team around him. They'd have to weigh the short-term boost Rodgers would bring and the longer-term implications for their roster building and cap management. Since Rodgers would likely play only a few more years, they'd need to weigh the importance of winning now against preserving enough assets to stay competitive later. The San Francisco 49ers are another suitable option for Rodgers, especially considering that he hails from California. The 49ers have built a fine team over time, but lacked a quarterback to bring them to the finish line. They already possess good pass receivers like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle on their offense. Head coach Kyle Shanahan has shown he knows how to construct a solid offense, and Rodgers can make this system function well. The 49ers offense is a run-pass combination, something that's favored by Rodgers due to the fact that he thrives at play-action passes as well as moving in the pocket. Used to. With him added to their offense, it would give them more ways to attack defenses and score points. They have an already strong defense and coaching team, so this would get them closer to realizing their championship dream. But it would cost a lot to hire Rodgers, and the 49ers need to think about how this would affect their budget. They have young quarterbacks on their team they've been developing, and hiring Rodgers would change their plans for these players. The team would need to decide whether they want to win now with Rodgers or continue to build up their younger quarterbacks for the future. They would also need to consider how much going out and spending big money on Rodgers would affect their ability to keep players on the roster in the future. The New Orleans Saints are also a potential destination for Rodgers as they're seeking to rebuild their franchise. They need a veteran quarterback to lead their offense, and Rodgers has proven he can deliver under pressure in high-pressure games throughout his career. The Saints have recently signed Kellen Moore as their head coach, and his experience of constructing strong offenses would be perfectly suited for Rodgers' talent. Moore loves to make artistic plays and long passes, and this is exactly what the kind of player Rodgers likes. The Saints do have some quality pieces on offense to start with, including receivers Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, who would be able to take advantage of Rodgers' accurate passing game. Their running game with Alvin Kamara is still good too, which would give Rodgers a good balanced attack to work with. This volume of skill would allow the Saints to go on a run within the NFC South, a weaker division the past few seasons. But the Saints would have to fix some pretty serious problems first before signing Rodgers. They've had some troubles with the consistency of their spending cap, so they'd have to figure out a way to fit room in for his contract. They'd also have to stabilize their offensive line to keep him safe because he's said that he prefers good protection no matter where he goes. They would have to attempt to invest in Rodgers, but not to invest the remainder of their capital to the point of excess in renovating these other aspects of the team. The news that Myles Garrett asked to be traded from the Cleveland Browns has made a lot of noise in the NFL. The Browns finished last season with just 3 wins, and Garrett made it clear he wants to play for a team that can compete for championships. This has created interest in several teams, and the Detroit Lions have emerged as a possible destination. The Lions have been attempting to strengthen their defense, and Garrett would give them one of the NFL's best pass rushers. To trade for a player of Garrett's talent, the Lions would need to offer a solid package of draft picks to the Browns. This would be tough since the Lions' current draft positions might not be good enough to induce the Browns to trade Garrett. The Browns would prefer to get near the top picks in the draft for their featured defender. Money is the other significant factor in any such deal. The Lions would need to take careful consideration about how they would be in a position to fit Garrett's massive contract into their salary cap. They would need to make sure that adding his salary would not prevent them from signing other players they need now and in the future. They'd also need to take into account how Garrett's salary would affect their capacity to renew contracts of their existing young players who will be needing new contracts soon. The Lions would have to consider what they'd be sacrificing to acquire Garrett and how they'd compensate in their coffers once he's joined the roster. The nature of the trade would be an improvement now, but they would need to protect against making such a deal damage their prospects in the future for putting together a complete team. Then there are the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders could try to make a play for Garrett because they have extra money to spend as they have Jaden Daniels on a rookie quarterback deal. This means that they have room to absorb a big contract. Having Garrett add to their defensive line would greatly improve their defense, and he would fit well with the defensive players they already have. But it would not be easy to get Garrett. The Commanders would need to give up some valuable draft picks or players to get him from his present club. They'd also need to pay him a lot of money, which could complicate them further in trying to get other players who they might need later on. The situation is complicated more so if Deshaun Watson's contract is brought into trade talks, given that his contract takes up significant salary cap space. The Commanders would need to weigh heavily whether it's worth what they'd be giving up to acquire Garrett. Although keeping Daniels on his cheap rookie contract gives them some future cap space, they must be careful that they don't hurt their opportunities to build the rest of their roster over the next few seasons. They would need to determine how Garrett's huge signing bonus was going to mesh with the rest of their cap commitments and allow him some space to sign other players. The Kansas City Chiefs would be a good fit for Garrett since they have consistently appeared in the Super Bowls. They might have all the offense getting the attention, but with Garrett on defense, they would gain an elite pass rusher to pair with Chris Jones. They would make it much harder for opposing quarterbacks to reach the point where they can throw a pass. This would put the Chiefs as a dominant defense and offense unit. Kansas City's largest obstacle would be squeezing Garrett's massive contract under their salary cap. The Chiefs have already sunk a lot of money into most of their top performers, so they'd need to get creative with their payroll to include them. They might need to rework other deals or cut loose some of their players to make room. Garrett's trade would also come at the expense of the Chiefs' quality draft picks. That could make it harder for the Chiefs to fill their roster with low-cost, young talent down the road. Since draft picks are most important to those teams operating with tight caps, the Chiefs would have to consider whether Garrett's short-term injection is worth potentially giving up the future capacity to rosterly versatility. The team would also need to think about how this action might affect them in terms of holding on to their existing core players in the future. The potential movements of Aaron Rodgers and Myles Garrett are more than just headline-grabbing stories. They have the power to reshape the competitive balance of the NFL. Rodgers' decision could trigger a series of quarterback moves, influencing draft decisions and free agency signings league-wide. Similarly, Garrett's relocation would not only bolster his new team's defense, but also impact offensive game plans within their division. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.